Women fear hunger more than they fear like public speaking. It's insane to me because you have been taught when you are not eating, even though you want to, you have been told you're so disciplined. Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection. I'm so excited to talk to you today about attuned eating. This is such an important topic because I don't think a lot of people understand it. There's intuitive eating, which is like a process. I'm just going to talk about attuned eating and how I teach it to my clients. I don't even have a structure or notes for this because I'm just going off the cuff because I do this shit all the time. So saddle up with that. Before then, though, I'm just going to talk about my life and a little bit of update. So if you're not interested in that, you can check out the show notes to skip forward to the topic at hand. So, okay, gosh, you guys, where do we even start? Been a little bit disconnected. My dad has been in the hospital. And so I think the biggest thing for me is just following up on Love Island bullshit, the aftermath, the after the villa, and the Call Her Daddy episode. Now, you guys are not going to get this a couple of weeks from now, but just kind of funny that I love Alex Cooper. I love how, because we're very similar, very like vulgar. I like that she can go there, but I really felt like in that. So for you guys who are like, what the hell are you talking about? So there was a controversial, kind of polarizing individual on the last Love Island. Now, if you listen to TikTok, you know who she is. Her name is Huda. And from my perspective as a therapist, this woman was very broken, and you could tell, she was very much a victim in a lot of situations. If things didn't go her way, then that person was a villain. If things did go her way, then they were okay, right? And what I mean by that is someone could be setting a boundary for her, but in her mind, if it's not going the way that she wanted it to, she would then tell them like that they were being mean to her and not in those exact words. And there was a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of, you can see like jealousy, need for external validation, but also a need to make sure that she's never seen negatively. And this caused the relationships she was in to be very toxic. And it was very polarizing. But when I talk about the relationships she was in, not just the male relationships, you can see the female relationships really kind of be affected by her and like how she goes about her engagement and all of that. And so anyway, so now they're off the island. She didn't win. She actually got broken, or she broke up with the guy at the finale, which was nutty. And she went on Call Her Daddy. Now, I thought Alex Cooper was gonna like hold her feet to the fire. Unfortunately, she didn't, and I fucking love Alex. I thought that she could have done a little bit more. Now, hold on. So, one of the thoughts I had is Alex really just like placating her so that she can kind of lay her, like make her own bed. Because that could have been the way that she did it, but it almost like from someone who doesn't understand that type of tactic, you can make it could seem like she's just letting her, like almost like agreeing with her so that this woman never has to take accountability for her actions and like how toxic she is. And one of the things that stood out to me was that she talked about her childhood. Now, I think Alex is like, "Oh, tell me about your childhood. Like, where did it all start?" And then in that same conversation, she talked about the domestic violence and this kind of skirted around discussion that her father SA'd her. And I just found that interesting for someone who's like, don't tell people my business, especially negative, but then goes on this international podcast and says this without even being kind of coerced or like what's the word, like where they kind of push you towards that conversation. It actually wasn't even that. And I found that really interesting because it almost seemed like I need to say this to justify my behaviors. And that could just be me. Now, the reason I say that because then everything was her justifying her behaviors and she did get the sympathy card from a lot of people. And it's like just because things have happened to you in your life doesn't mean that that's an excuse to be a fucking asshole, right? You have to take accountability. Because someone hurt you, that's their responsibility, but what you do with that hurt is your responsibility. And I just find it really disheartening that there are people who are defending that behavior because I know I have been that person. So, and I was her age, so I did my healing later, and that's also an option for her. But I didn't realize why I did the things I did. So by her putting those pieces together, it makes me think that she does realize that, if that makes sense. And for me, like I had to change myself because I was the girl who was insecure. I was the girl who needed to be the center of attention. I was the girl who would get very angry and controlling. And it affected my relationships. And at some point I had to say, like, is this me? Like I'm the problem. And so I just felt like the podcast could have been a bit more confronting. I think that she could have asked some better questions and or kind of called out the hypocrisy. I would love to interview Yehuda. Come on over to the Dating Deja Vu podcast. If you guys didn't know, that's my second podcast. I do one episode for a week for that podcast. So, Dating Deja Vu. So, that was something that now I'm listening to TikToks about. What else, you guys? I don't even know. I think that's really it. So, let's jump into it today. Let's talk about attuned eating. So, attuned eating is something that I talk about a lot and it gets thrown around a lot, but rarely with the nuance that it deserves, right? And so attuned eating is not just, eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. And it's not just that intuitive eating buzzwordy type of thing, right? What does it actually mean to be attuned with your eating when you've spent years distrusting your body? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, if it's the person who's either tried tracking macros, which is something I've done, tried tracking macros to perfection, or swung the pendulum to not tracking at all. A lot of you don't feel safe around food. So I wanted to talk about this for you because most women don't stop trusting their hunger randomly, right? It usually starts with some sort of interaction with an adult figure because when you were a baby, you could cry when you're hungry and you would pull away when you were full. Every single baby does that, right? But somewhere along the line, whether that was you vicariously experiencing your parents feeling, pinching themselves, restricting their food, or binging food, or you were directly given comments. This is very common, like, oh no, you're not that hungry, or no, you need to eat more, right? Oh, you just had a snack, or whatever it is. We tell them if what their hunger and fullness are. Then on top of that, society says, well, if you're fat, you need to diet, right? And it's a fear, right? So we already have these comments in childhood. Plus, then we have this fear of gaining weight. We have a fear of like letting go and fear that if we actually listen to like our cravings, that we'd end up like living in a box of Cheez-Its or something like that, right? I love Cheez-Its so much. I used to get a Cheez-Its a bag and diet and Dr. Pepper like every morning for breakfast at school at high school. Anyways, society, we encourage this kind of micromanaging, right? We use this idea that willpower is the weapon here. So we swap real hunger cues for rules, right? So don't eat after 7. I can't have carbs. I need to earn my food. I need to track everything. And let's be honest, everything works once, right? Everything works for a while, right? You lose weight, you get praise from people, you feel in control, but that's great until you're not, right? And when you're not, you're going to end up knee deep in a bottle of almond butter in the pantry at 11 p.m. because you've misplaced what control is with hunger and fullness. And what we don't need is control. We need connection. We need connection to our bodies. So I want to define what attuned eating is. It's the practice of syncing your food choices with your body's cues, your biological needs, your emotional landscape. It is built on trust. It is not built on the trauma and the bullshit. It is built on being present with yourself and not punishing yourself. This means eating when you're hungry, even if it's not a mealtime, or vice versa. Choosing foods that are both satisfying and stabilizing to you, and pausing and asking yourself, like, what does my body need right now? Or what would get me, instead of, excuse me, what would get me the fastest fat loss or get me to my macros? Now, I'm a macronutrient girly and I have been for a long time, but honestly, I think it's time we need to step out of that. When I'm looking at macros now, I'm not looking at like, oh, does this get me to my calories? Like I'm looking at the macro and micros. So my fiber, my added sugar, and my protein are what are on MyFitnessPal. If you did not know, I think it's only in Premier MyFitnessPal. You can actually put in there what macros you see. And I like it that way because I don't actually even look at the calories. I'm just making sure I'm hitting the 25 grams of fiber or more. I'm not going over 30 grams of added sugar. And of course, I'm hitting a protein range. And that's just something I started doing and I freaking love it. So, attuned eating. Okay. So, again, it's choosing kind of what does my body need right now, right? It doesn't reject a structure, but it uses structure as a scaffold, not a cage, right? So we are still tracking macros loosely, like I talked about, it, especially for me, because it's helping me with hitting those targets. You can still do that. You can also still eat at consistent times to make sure your blood sugar is regulated. You can also use, again, targets like protein to support your metabolism. The difference, though, you guys, is the intention, right? You're not eating to manipulate your body. You're eating to support your body. I have had such a trajectory or, just a evolving relationship with food, and it's a beautiful thing. It's so funny though, because, once you think, oh, like, oh, I've got it down, like my relationship with food is good, you realize it could get a little bit better, right? And I realized like I I really want to be connected to the foods that make me feel good and what my body needs in certain moments. And that to me is like the next best step, right? But let's talk about the obstacles to achieving eating because it can be so hard. It's because, we have been praised to ignore hunger. We as women, I have so many clients be like, but I'm hungry, Christina. Like, good, good. That's a good thing. Women fear hunger more than they fear like public speaking. It's insane to me because you have been taught when you are not eating, even though you want to, you have been told you're so disciplined, right? We also have like moralized foods, right? Bad foods make me bad or wrong or failed. And you confuse kind of the idea of fullness as failure, just like you would as eating a bad food as failure. If I feel too full, I've messed up, I've gone over the edge, I'm overindulgent, right? And there is some truth to that when we look at like the hunger and fullness scale. But what is actually kind of overindulgent versus, the extra couple bites of the chocolate cake, they're not the same, right? The problem, though, is that for a lot of you, perfectionism really is the whisper in your ear. You either are doing this flawlessly, of course, or you're not doing it at all and you're fucking failure, right? This all or nothing thinking completely destroys attunement in your body. And I'm not gonna lie, I still struggle with that because it's almost like I've been conditioned with the hit your macros, figure out how to get them into your day. That It was helpful because we weren't getting in the macronutrients. So we almost again swung the pendulum of like, hit the macros, do this, do that. When in all reality, if we look at research, every single recommended macronutrient intake is a range. But we get so fixated of, I've got to hit the 155 grams of protein. No, you don't. You don't, right? There is a range. And for my clients, I give them about -10 on their grams of protein if they are someone who needs a little bit more support or not like support, but it's just one of those macronutrients that's just harder for them. And then I give them 100 calories up or down on their calorie intake as well. So, you know, and as I grow and I learn, I start to make these changes with them as well. And so attuned eating requires tolerance to being imperfect, is what I need you to understand. You will overeat sometimes. You will emotionally eat sometimes. I did that this weekend. If you didn't see on my Instagram, I literally was like, I'm gonna eat, I'm emotionally eating this trail mix. I finished the bag finally. God, I love trail mix. You know what drives my clients absolutely crazy is they're eating clean and doing all the workouts, but they don't see the weight budge. Their sleep is all over the place. Their hormones are through the roof and they feel like they're going crazy.
Yeah, it's frustrating because 9 out of 10 times it's something hormone related that no one's looking at. It's perimenopause, menopause. Our biology internally has shifted, but no one's changing the strategy as far as approach.
What if perimenopause support included like therapeutic guidance, nutrition, exercise, and hormonal support all in one place?
Seriously, it would be great if you didn't have to track down like 10 different experts just to feel like yourself again.
That's why I created the Mindset of Menopause and have partnered with Dr. Jordan Trapp to create a comprehensive plan to your hormonal health.
Together, we are making medical insight meet emotional strategy. So your symptoms make sense, your plan actually works, and your power comes back online.
This isn't just support. This is your comeback season.
Click below for more information.
You will misread signals in your body too, right? That doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're just trusting your body again. Okay. And I want you to understand too, like sometimes I'm just freaking hungrier. I had this conversation with one of my very favorite clients because she's just like, I sit and try to justify, like, well, why am I hungrier? You know, da 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 da. And I said, can we just acknowledge you're just hungrier? And this is someone who really struggles with perfectionism in her body. So I know for her, she's so fearful of like again, pendulum swing. I'm going to say that a bunch of times, swinging, excuse me, to the other side of like becoming this like binge eater. And I'm like, that's not who you are, right? And also, if your body's saying, feed me, feed it. I think of the plant. Remember the plant that, what was that? The Little Shop of Horrors. It's like, feed me, right? That's your belly. And it's telling you that it's hungry. And for me, sometimes this happened last week. I I find it really interesting because I'm the guinea pig on myself. And what works for me may not work for you either. So I was splitting breakfast, right? So I had pre-workout and after workout. But then I found myself hungrier later in the day. And for some reason in my brain, I was like, that's bad. I need to maybe eat one bigger breakfast. And I'm like, no, dummy. Maybe you starting your day with food, replenishing your stores after your workout, and then going on with your day actually brought your basal metabolic rate up. But for some reason, my brain was like, oh no, we've got to switch it up. You're hungry. I know. I know. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Anyway, okay, let's talk about the psychology because, duh, why wouldn't we? So, as a therapist, if your relationship with food feels chaotic, it's usually, again, not about the food. It is your nervous system, your body's sense of safety, right? And that history of control and shame and emotional suppression. So, food often is the first place that we feel regulated with. When you cried as a baby, you received food to calm you down. What? I know. Watch a baby. If you do anything with this episode, go watch your local baby. See how they act, right? So food is often the first place that we felt relief through. And now it's the first place we act out on when things don't feel safe for us, right? So attuned eating is a tool to help with emotional repatterning. When you can pause and check in before you eat, you're not just asking about hunger, you're asking things like, how am I feeling right now? Am I stressed? Am I feeling a bit lonely? Am I overwhelmed? Am I punishing myself? That's a big one. Do I feel like I need to be mean to me and not eat the thing that my body wants, right? That is incredibly important because when you can stop and ask and assess, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. I know that when I am overly emotional or I need to shut down, I do not want to eat. It's almost like you need to stop eating to numb yourself so you don't have to feel this. And that's very disordered. But luckily, I know that now. So then now I can get in front of it. So let's talk about how to start practicing this today. So, one of the things that I've said to you guys before that I will say 10,000 times is you will not stop eating when you're full if you don't start eating when you're actually hungry. That is incredibly important with this because attuned eating is really understanding that. And I want to take that a step further. You will not stop eating when you're full if you don't start eating when you're hungry. Let me say that again. You will not stop eating when you're actually full if you don't start eating when you're actually hungry and eat what your body wants in that moment. Okay? Because at times we'll just try to eat our little, chicken, rice, and broccoli, and our body doesn't want that. It wants a little flavor. Maybe it doesn't need to eat a McDonald's, cheeseburger, but maybe it wants some avocado, right? Maybe it wants some berries. Maybe it wants some dark chocolate, whatever, right? When we can do what I'm telling you right now and add that satisfaction piece, because you need to not only eat when you're hungry, you need to be satisfied. And I will tell you, working with clients, my client Kelly has been so fucking awesome in doing this. 'Cause she's like, wow, sometimes, normally when I would feel that hunger, I would want to reach for the sugary thing. But actually, what I wanted was some nuts. I had the nuts and I ate a portion of it that was satisfying. And it was just peanuts, right? Whereas it could have been, the sugary snack. So, being able to recognize not only am I truly hungry, but also what do I want? But I'm going to get into that. So, what we want to do first and foremost is just have a hunger check in, right? Before every meal, rate your hunger from a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. 1 is completely ravenous. We are like gonna pass out. 10 is completely sick because you're so full. You know what I'm talking about? That food is coming up. We don't want that. Okay. 5 is neutral. 5 is either, I am starting to eat. I'm not full, but I'm still a little bit hungry because I'm just starting to eat, right? So 5 is your neutral point. For my clients, we like to get around like depending on their goals, a 6 or 7, maybe an 8 if we're going into a surplus, but we're never exceeding a 9 or 10 because that's going overboard, and we're never starting to eat under a 3. So have that hunger check in. Where am I? Write it down. Then ask yourself, what would feel both satisfying to me and what would feel kind of like stabilizing, right? So if you, for example, want some chips, right? Pair them with something like tuna salad or, I don't know, an egg. Or if you want a cookie, pair it with a yogurt, right? Attune eating honors your cravings and the function of your food. I was listening to a podcast and she said instead of focusing on being full, focus on being fuel. And why didn't I fucking come up with that? That's the thing I would say, right? And in this case, we're focused on being fuel and and fun. I'll come up with something else. Being that I'm fueling myself and I'm enjoying it, right? So if I want the chips, pair it with something that's fueling as well. A lot of people, again, because we are, demoralizing ourselves because we ate the chips, think, oh, well, I can't have them. So if I'm gonna have them, then I need to just have the whole bag. When it's like, no, buddy, if you just have some chips with some tuna salad, all is well in the world. Nothing happened. You're still a great person. We're all good, right? So that's number two. So number one, hunger check in. Number two, what will feel both satisfying and stabilizing. Now, you can set consistent meal times, especially for us women. For some of you, depending on your schedules, that might look like small meals. Stop listening to people, including myself. I was thinking about it. I kind of hung my hat on some things in the beginning of like meal timing doesn't matter. For some people, they're like, eat 3 meals. For me, I eat several small meals. But then for me, I think sometimes I'm not allowing my blood sugar to come back down in the way I should. So I should probably bring it back some. And I know that because I can overeat if I have a snack too close to the last meal. And so I can see that happening. But what I've realized is every person is their own person. How I train myself and do with myself is going to be different for you. And that can be hard. I work with clients for, a good year and still not figured this out for them because we're really just trying to see what sticks. And the problem with what sticks is you got to take some time with different things. And so if you are someone, if we need consistent meal times, I'm thinking about one of my clients particularly who is in a high profile position. I told her, I was like, we've got to have these little things just to keep your blood sugar stable, right? But at the same time, we want to stay flexible with that as well. So rhythm with your food, again, helps to regulate your blood sugar and your cortisol levels, which is super important. We want to make it not so rigid, but just like supporting us. I can't tell you when I eat first thing in the morning, I have less stress throughout the day. I did not do that this morning, and I was very frustrated at the beginning of my day. And I was like, you didn't eat this morning. So be consistent, but flexible with meal times. And where the flexibility comes in again is if I'm someone who is too rigid with that. I can have some space, right? If I know for me, when I was following macros, I had to have this meal, snack, this meal, snack in order to hit my macros. But if you're someone who's more attuned eating, you may notice that you don't have to have that structure. Your structure may change. Use a food journal. Don't just track, no, you don't have to track calories, but just track your patterns, right? So what were you feeling before? What was your hunger on a scale of 1 to 10? How are you feeling during the meal, after the meal? Do you notice any trends with that meal? For our clients, obviously, we have our food journal, so I can kind of see the shifts and the patterns in our clients' meals through the food journal. What it is you can take a picture of the meal and then you have a place to comment, which is really nice. It's really helpful when we're practicing attuned eating. And maybe, let's limit the distraction. So, like a distracted meal, if that's something that you do multiple times a day, maybe we say, okay, this week I'm going to focus on one less distracted meal each day. So, no phone, no laptop, just you and your plate. Even if it's for 10 minutes, like really sit with your food and recognize, like, oh, I've been eating really quickly, or when we're distracted, our focus is on that other thing. So we're not even realizing if we're satisfied or not, right? And so we'll end the meal, and while we may have received the fuel and the satisfaction in regards to what we chose to eat, we weren't mindful about it. We weren't thinking about it. Again, I compare it to sex, right? You could, this is hard to say, but you could be having sex, have an orgasm, but then be thinking this would never happen, but be thinking something else and it's not as satisfying. I guess your orgasm could be not as satisfying. You could still have it, but if you were like mindful in it, it'd be more satisfying, right? So let's cut down the distracted foods. So that's really it, you guys. I love attuned eating. Now, again, we can still use something like a MyFitnessPal, but I would focus on, okay, What are my goals? Are my goals to build muscle? Okay, well, I'm going to need to just focus on the protein and hitting that target. Going to focus on fiber, and maybe I'm also going to focus on I'll just use mine, lowering my added sugar, right? Because the added sugar is going to cause inflammation. That can make my joints achy. If my joints are achy, I'm not going to recover as well, or I'm not going to perform as well in the gym. Obviously, the protein is going to help with building, and the fiber is going to help with, you know, fibrous foods are those carbs that are going to help me in performance as well. So just know you can do that, but you can trust yourself again. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. I spent years outsourcing hunger to fucking my fitness pal or trying to fix my body with all of the rules or feeling like food was a way to, only celebrate or it was my enemy, right? And I absolutely hate it. You can trust yourself. I trust myself, and it will not happen overnight. It's not a perfect straight line, but it's day to day. It's bite to bite. Just rebuild that bridge. Attuned eating isn't about being good, right? It's about being yourself. How wonderful is that? So listen, learn, and let your biology do its thing. Love, love, love. If you guys enjoyed this episode or you know someone who could use this information, please send it over to them or review me. Review me. That sounds so funny. Give me a review. Woo! It's like a Miss America pageant. 5-star rating and reviews go a long way here at the Mindset Mirror Connection. We are still a new podcast, even though we have many episodes. Still new, still need to get out there. Let's get us on like one of these big podcast channels. Like, let's do that. That sounds great. If you haven't already, make sure you're following or subscribed to this channel. Check out those show notes for what we've got going on. Right now, we're just kind of cruising, right? Started our new cohort with the mindset of menopause, working with our mindset method movement, which is our group coaching program. And I, right now, have kind of closed off one-to-one coaching until all the things with my daddy-o are understood. So that will be on pause for just a second, but we still have the group coaching cohorts in all those capacities. So check out the show notes for that. And I'm going to leave you the same way I do every single week, reminding you that what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye bye.